Hello, welcome to Premier Scene. I'm Claire Bueno, where tonight we're finding out a little more about mummy porn with actor Christian McKay and director Tony Britten. Now, dare I ask you where your reading material came from as preparation for this role?
Well, years ago, a girlfriend of mine introduced me to Anais Nin. And of course, when you're 20, that's pretty exciting stuff. And when we did this film out of research, I went back to Anais Nin and I realized that it hadn't aged very well, or I hadn't aged very well, and I found it rather obvious. And but I didn't read 50 Shades of quite a few people did on the film, but I didn't. I thought I'll stay blissfully unaware.
The whole concept of mummy porn seems such an ideal setup for a comedy, doesn't it, really?
It does, yes. And of course, in the film, my character, David Rose, comes up with the extraordinary idea of saving his pub by getting his 4 pals, his domino-playing chums, to write a ChickLit mummy porn extravaganza. And you know, I mean, that idea in itself is quite funny, isn't it?
And actually, what was lovely about your character that I thought that there was this kind of entrepreneurial side to his nature, and kind of like, well, let's just have a go. And did you like that kind of spirit within him as well when you read the part?
Yes, absolutely. I loved the character. I think it was Oliver Reed who said that the best drama school you can go to is the pub, the local pub. And I live in the village. I live in a village in Kent, and I have 2 lovely local pubs, very different. And one up the hill, one down the hill, and it depends, on my mood, which one I go into. And it's lovely to go in there and observe people. That is a great drama school. But I think if I played some of the eccentrics that you meet in these places, I would be derided and criticized for playing the cliche. But of course, cliches wouldn't exist without a kernel of truth, would they?
Very, very true.
Yeah.
And actually, funnily enough, you're trying to save a pub, and in this world where we've got franchise everything, to actually save a community, it's all kind of like a community spirit, isn't it? And saving a local pub actually is really important, because that's all part of British tradition, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. And there's an analogy between that and your local independent cinema, or indeed independent film. I like to think in this age of conglomerates that we're representatives of your friendly local neighborhood grocery store, Yeah.
And also, what I really like about this film as well, another kind of strong theme for me, is we get to see very much what it's like for the life of an actor, and also the journey a book goes on once it reaches a publisher, don't we?
Yes. Yes, you do. Yes, I mean, it's a very interesting kind of parallel that happens. Of course, Dame Eileen's character was based on a famous agent, and I think she knew her, and thought, yes, I'll use that. And so there's all kinds of points of references.
And what did you get from being on the film? Was there a particular lovely memory that you've taken away with you?
Well, it really was such fun to make. I think everybody responded to the script and the setup. And it was so wonderful being in Holt and North Norfolk. It's such a beautiful place. The people are very kind, and they pitched in. They all became involved. And there was wonderful friendships. I mean, I worked with Miles Jupp before. We'd done another British comedy. So it was a pleasure to work with him again. And, I was acting with my absolute idols in Sir John Hurt and Dame Eileen Atkins. Absolutely adored them. And when your idols turn out to be everything you could possibly wish them to be, well, they did and more. And they were just delightful. And to watch them work, masters of their craft. All I ask is that I work and I learn. And to be sat there, watching those masters at work was extraordinary. And it started a kind of it started a process, because then Then last year I worked with Meryl Streep and Hugh Grant, and I thought, this is keeping up with the Joneses. Good, because I thought after working with Dame Eileen and Sir John, I thought, oh well, it's going to be back to the drawing board. And then it was Meryl Streep and Hugh Grant. Then it was Helen Mirren and Donald Sutherland. I think I got Glenn Close up next. I just keep working with these wonderful people. That's fantastic, because I keep watching them, and listening and learning, hopefully,
Absolutely. Watching the film, I felt that sort of camaraderie and generosity of spirit is very much at the heart of this story. Is that what you felt when you wrote it?
It's absolutely what I felt. It's to do with communities. It's a kind of term that's sometimes sneered at, and I'm afraid sneered at by people in the big city. But the reality is that lots of people, millions of people around the country, have communities. And more often than not, they are centred around a pub.
It's true, and actually, funnily enough, the story also is about saving a traditional English pub, family-run pub. I think that's very much a sign of the times, isn't it, at the moment, when we're sort of franchised out with big conglomerates. To actually save something that was local and part of the community was obviously very important to talk about.
Well, it was, and it was very much. We didn't want to be po-faced about it. I hope we're not. I think it's quite funny. But it was a really important narrative device, because when Oliver, my son, and I started working on this script, the initial interest was the whole erotic novel phenomenon, because we, like most films, this took several years to come to fruition, and the whole phenomenon had just started, and we just couldn't believe it. And so then we decided, wouldn't it be interesting to subvert it and have blokes writing books which are essentially written almost exclusively by women for women, and we thought, isn't that a funny idea? But you know what? In any movie or any piece of art, it's great to have the idea, but you've got to have the reason to get from A to B, and that's when the pub came in, because obviously that's the spine of the narrative.
And mummy porn, what kind of research did you have to do? Did you have to read these books to get a good idea of what you were actually writing about?
But I didn't read many. I love a good dose of sort of slap and tickle a la Jilly Cooper, who's just got her new book coming up. I was just reading an excerpt from it before we met. But God bless Jilly, because she's so funny and she does the worst puns in the world. I did read 50 Shades, and it's a hard read. Pardon my pun there. It's not very well written, and early drafts of the script, we were quite wicked about it, and then it was pointed out to me that we might be alienating a lot of our audience, and that actually, when push comes to shove, oh gosh, I've said something else that's a terrible pun.
We're built on a nation of double entendre.
Absolutely, and I can't help it, they just come out. Oh no. Really, there's no harm in it. It doesn't hurt anybody. So it's kind of fine, but it's not, it is not great literature.
It's not Jane Austen, as they say.
It's not Jane Austen, as they say in the film, which what's it? There's a line when David Troughton says, "ChickLit, where Jane Austen wrote great lit." And I thought, yes, that's very nice.
Exactly. And talking about the actors that you've got in the film, you really have got some of the best actors that we've got in the country in this film, haven't you?
I know, we did get awfully lucky. It's a source of constant amazement to me. To be fair to me and to my son, no actor's going to do a film like this if the script is rubbish. They don't need, but certainly actors of that calibre simply don't need to. But it was pretty good. Miles Jupp was the first one to sign up, who's a mate, and the minute somebody like that says, "Oh, I really like this," I'm put me down. You can then phone agents and say, the first thing the agent will say, quite rightly, for a film like this is, well, who else is in it? And you say, well, Miles Jupp's doing it. Oh, really? Oh, well, perhaps you could send a script.
And then you get people like John Hurt and Kathy Tyson on board.
Yeah, I know. Well, John had to do it because his wife is my producer, one of my producers, and John they're very dear friends of ours. But he wouldn't have done it, but it was really Dame Eileen. When she signed up, she said, I really like the script. She was a client of Peggy Ramsey, who is her character is based on the late great Peggy Ramsey, the great literary agent. I hadn't realised she was a client, and she said, "You know, I've never worked with John Hurt," which I couldn't believe. And she said, "If John does it, I'm there." At which point John said, "Well, I have to do it, don't I?" I said, "Well, I think you do, love, you know." So he rather conned them. And you know, Kathy is a small part, but she is brilliant, absolutely pitch perfect, and absolutely adorable to work with.
And what also seems like a great character within the film is the village itself that you're filming in. How beautiful and quintessentially British it is.
It's where I live.
Oh, is it? Look at you!
Yeah. The pub that we filmed all that stuff in is the pub where me and my mates play dominoes every Wednesday. The table they play dominoes on the film is the table we play, and I'll be there on Wednesday evening.
Oh, how wonderful!
Yeah.
And is there anything that you've taken away with you from making this film? A special memory?
There's lots and lots of special memories. My favourite memory is watching three really fine actors, Susan Kidd, Terry Malloy and the great Polly Hemingway, who are all really established. They may not be names above the Billboard stars, but people that everybody recognises, playing the casting director, the producer and the director in an audition scene, and doing payback for all the auditions they've had to do, where the producer's sitting there playing. Because in the film, Terry Malloy sits there playing a game on his phone, and I said, "Terry, what are you doing?" He said, "The last movie I auditioned for, that is exactly what the producer did." Isn't that terrible? So it was just delightful watching them. It's payback time.
Actually, there are quite a few parallels, aren't there, with this? That with we see the journey of how a book becomes a film, and even what it's like for a jobbing actor as well, which I thought was really nice. There were really nice touches throughout the film.
Well, you have to base it on some form of reality, and this stuff happens. Suddenly, one day you can be a star, but the next day, maybe not. And sometimes you can choose not to follow that path, which is what we think the Dakota Blue Richards character does. But you'll have to wait for the sequel to find out.